Today I'm going to do a video on debtors age analysis. Just before I start with the age analysis, there are a couple of other things you need to be aware of when dealing with debtors. First of all, you can't just sell on credit to anybody. So you need to actually get each debtor to complete an application form so that you can determine certain things. Obviously, you need to gather information about the new customer. Things like what his name is, his ID, his cell phone number, his address, etc. Secondly, to make the customer aware of the terms and conditions relating to credit sales. So you're telling the debtor you have 30 days to pay back, 60 days, whatever. If you pay back within a certain time, then you'll get given a discount. If your account is outstanding for more than a certain period of time, we're going to charge interest and so on. Then all that information will be given to your debtor before opening an account for him. So it's basically going to form the basis of a contract between the parties. In other words, between the debtor and the business. Every month, you're also going to prepare and send out statements of account. Now, in that statement of account, you are informing the customer of his current standing. In other words, you are telling him this is how much you owe, this is how long you've owed it for, etc. You're also going to provide the customer with a clear and concise report of the previous month's transactions. So what the debtor can see by looking at the statement is what he purchased on credit from you, what he returned to you, how much he paid back, and so on. And then you're also requesting that the debtor pays back any outstanding amounts from the past month and, if necessary, from previous months. Now, if your job is a credit controller in a business, you need to keep careful check on the accounts of the debtor's ledger. In other words, you need to look at each individual debtor. You need to make sure that the debtor doesn't exceed his credit limit. The credit limit is the maximum amount he's allowed to purchase for. So you need to check that no debtor is exceeding that. You need to check if the debtor is making regular payments. If not, then you need to follow up. And then overdue debtors account, you need to contact your debtors and inform them of the outstanding amount and request payment immediately. You can tell them that you're going to charge interest and so on. Now, one of the tools that the credit controller can make use of is something called age analysis. Basically what it does is it takes its debtor's outstanding balance and it breaks it down into amounts owing for 30 days, 60 days, etc. So if we look at this example here, we can see that Smith has a credit limit of 10,000. His present balance is 6,400. During the current month, he has purchased for 2,200 Rand, and 4,200 Rand is what he owes for 30 days. And if you look here, the credit terms are 30 days. So this debtor here is ideal. He's sticking to his limit as well as the credit terms. If on the other hand you look at this debtor car, first things first, he's exceeded his credit limit almost. And that means he's very close to actually going over what he's allowed to spend. Not only that, you've continued selling on credit to him. That is despite the fact that these amounts here, the 5,600, the 2,100, and the 56 Rand here, are outstanding for more than the credit terms of 30 days. So this debtor here is not following the credit terms of the business. So at a glance, you can actually see whether debtors are doing as they should do or whether you need to contact them. Just a little bit more detail regarding this age analysis. First of all, the credit limit, this here, that refers to the maximum amount that the debtor can spend. So this guy here can't spend any more because he's actually reached his credit limit. Then this total balance here of 25,400, that shows the amount that the debtors owe at the end of the month. That's the one that should equal the total of the debtors list. So that amount here is what you're going to do that internal reconciliation with to check that it's the same as the debtors list. If it's not, then you need to do corrections. Then any debtors that are not complying with credit terms, that's this person here, John, as well as Carr, you can take action against them. So you can say settlement discount if you pay back what you're supposed to pay back within the stipulated period. You can charge an interest, you can send reminders, and so on. And then just one other thing. If you were drawing up this debtor's age analysis, anything that the debtor returned, you would subtract from the most recent balance. The reason for that is because those are far more likely to be the stock that's being returned. So if this debtor here returned stock for 200 Rand, you would subtract it from this 2,200 Rand because he's not going to be returning stock that was sold to him several months ago. Whereas if you're dealing with payments, you're going to subtract from the oldest debt first to clear these amounts. So let's say this debtor here, John, paid you 4,000 Rand. First of all, you'll subtract the full 3,200 Rand from 60 days. And if you paid 4,000 Rand, that would leave 800 Rand, which would come off his older debt, the 30 days. So you take the oldest debt first, clear it, then move to the next oldest debt, if necessary clear it, otherwise just subtract what amount was still left over. Okay, now in exams you either get given a debtor's age analysis like this, where they break down what each debtor owes you, and what they usually ask you there is to identify problems with individual debtors and solutions. In the worked example that I'm going to do, that's where they give you, and it's taken from a past paper, these totals over here only. And then they ask you far more general questions. So this one, the example here, is a detailed one. The one that I'm going to do in the worked example is basically a summarized activity. Okay, thank you.